Hey, and welcome back to the channel for another video. So I pose you this question. Has the easing of COVID restrictions fixed box office sales? I mean, are more people going to the movies? Are you yourself brave enough to go to the movies? Well, that's what we're going to analyze today. Now, we're going to analyze that with DAX. DAX is the calculation language that Power BI Desktop uses. This video is beginner level, so it's going to be appropriate if you're just starting out with Power BI Desktop, or maybe you've just started out using calculations inside Power BI Desktop. Or if you're experienced, I hope you find something inside it as well. Well, if you're ready, I know I am. I think it's about time. Let's go ahead and let's get into Power BI Desktop. Okay, so we're here inside Power BI Desktop. Let's first take a chance to look at the data that we've loaded. Now, the data that we've loaded here has been taken from Box Office Mojo. Box Office Mojo publish out the revenue results for the box office on a daily basis, well, on a weekly basis, and they do it across the globe for each of the countries. They even report out which are the #1 releases, etc., etc. Highly advise you go look at it if you're interested. Now, we're using it for personal use, not commercial. If you are interested in using it, go ahead and have a look at their website in terms of the different purchasing options and the different use options. Now, just like I've manually pulled down the results from Box Office Mojo and put them into an Excel, I've also done that with COVID restrictions. So the easing of them and also the implementing of them. And that's our cinema event dates table you'll see there. So basically, what's nice about this file, and what I've been told is nice, is that I can go here and I can look at the different trends for each of the countries. So I can go China, England, I can go France. We can clearly see for France, if we go down to 2021, that there were no sales in this period. And we can see, probably attribute that to COVID. But that's basically the data that we've got there. So we've got that event data, and then we've also got the revenue of the box office. Now, what's been asked is, it's nice that we can click France, but it would be even nicer if on the top left here, when we've clicked France, we have the word France come up. And then when we're not clicked, well, then we want it to say all. So it would look like this. The other thing that we've been asked for is the title of the chart in the middle here. Well, years and weeks sales revenue doesn't really make sense. It'd be better if it said weekly sales revenue for the years 2018 through to 2021. So it maps what's on the chart. So we can conquer that with DAX. Now, DAX, like I said before, is Power BI Desktop's calculation language. It's done through using something called measures. So we're going to create a measure. Now, a measure can return back one of two options. Either a label, which is a text value, like A, B, C, or values, which is like 1, 2, 3. So what are we doing? We're doing a label here. So we're going to return back text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the table I'm going to put it in for the moment. We're going to move it later. So I'm just going to click countries here, and then I'm going to go modeling, and then I'm going to click new measure. After doing new measure, it's going to pop up with this, and we're going to put it in. So I'm going to go LBL underscore, and then I'm going to put header. And then I'm going to put selected value. And then I'm going to choose the one I'm going to do. So I'm just going to go countries, and then I'm going to go name. And then as an alternate result, I'm going to put all. And then just like that, it comes across here. I can drag that onto the page, and let's just drag that onto the page. Let's first click off it, and then let's just drag it in. I'll try ticking it instead. If I go and click the 1, 2, 3, it's going to change it to a card, which is what I want. I'm then just going to resize it a bit. So I'm just going to go here, resize that. We're going to format it as well. So just going across here, I'm going to change this to size 15. And then I'm going to go and take off this category label. We can make that smaller again. And then we can go ahead and take the background off. We might have to change the color as well. So I'm just going to change the color, and I'll change it to that orange that we have above. Now you'll see with that done, when I go and click one of them, it's going to go and change it for the one I selected. So that's all great. Now, how do you change the chart? Well, again, we're going to make another label. So again, go to the table you want, and then we're going to go new measure. And then here, I'm gonna go label underscore chart equals. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it in. So I'm gonna put in 4 weeks in the years. And then I'm gonna put in some DAX. So I'm gonna put the minimum of the countries with gross year figures. And then I'm gonna go and put a hyphen in between. And then last, I'm gonna take the maximum of that year as well. So you can see there that I'm going the minimum of the countries with gross figures year and then the maximum year from it. Now after doing that, I'm gonna go to this chart here, click it. I'm just gonna reposition it because it kind of got out of whack a little bit. Do the formatting, go down to title here, hit FX, which stands for function, and then I'm gonna find that function that we wrote. We can see it here. I'm gonna do label chart, and then I'm gonna go okay. That's then gonna do that. We can see that we actually need a space in it, so let's fix that up. Let's just go to it and put the space there. And then we can see it there. So now we'll notice when we go and actually select it, it's actually showing those weeks. Just to show you that change as well, if I was to filter say this and say we don't want to look at 2018 anymore, I could go here, take 2018 out, and then you'll see that that has now changed to show that 2019 to 2021. So that's basically our 2 labels done. So remember we had 2 things. One was the labels and one was our values. Now when we talk about values, going on to the next one, there's 2 options when it comes to values. One is runtime, the other one is pre-calculated. So we're gonna do an example of both. But before we do that, I wanna remind you, if you haven't already, give this video a like and hit that subscribe button, as I'm sure you want to be notified about the awesome content that's going to be coming in the future. With that out of the way, we're going to start with our runtime calculation. So runtime calculations are appropriate if they needed to be calculated on the fly. So an example is when a user filters, say for all those countries, you want it to recalculate the average across all the weeks for the revenue sales. That's the one we're going to do. So average weekly revenue sales. So let's put that one in. So I'm going to put that one inside this table here. So I'm going to go here and go new measure. And then I'm going to call it weekly sales revenue. And then the function, the measure that we're going to put inside there is going to be average X. And average X allows me to pass in a set of values. And then I'm going to do it for the weekday, which is the date of the week. And then it allows me to specify what function measure I want to use. So I can go here and say my expression is going to be the sum of the overall gross. Now the first thing that usually beginners get tripped up with here is that it won't actually return the right value. And the reason it won't is because we need to put a calculate across it. So if we go here to this sum, I'm going to put a calculate at the front. And that's going to tell it to calculate the sum for that average X. The reason why we do that, a bit counterintuitive, is because we're passed in values, it implies that we're actually filtering the table for a specific column. In Power BI Desktop, that's what we call a filter context, not a row context. Average X by default expects a row context. What calculate does is it converts that sum to being able to be used in a filter context and inherits those values. So if you're using a regular table and not specifying columns, you should be all good to take out the calculate, but we need it here. So that's basically our measure done. Now let's bring that on the page and let's just test it out. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put it up the top here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring in our selection pane. So if I just go into our selection here, I'm just going to group these together so that I can duplicate them. So if I just go here, and then if I go not that one, so I'm just going to go here, here. So this one, this one, this one. And then I'm just going to go Control G to group them. I'm just going to go Control C, and then I'm going to go Control V. And then once that's copied across, I'm just going to move that. And then I'm just going to rename this to weekly sales. And then we're going to go and change this value that's inside of here. So I'm just going to take this and put that in. And then we can see that come in there. Now, It hasn't put the dollar formatting, and that's because we need to do that. So go up to here and put the dollar there. And then just change that to 0. So now we can see here that we've got our weekly sales. And let's just have a look at that. So when we go to England and we click that, it's going to recalculate it for England. When we go to France, it's going to go there and recalculate it for France. We could put other filters on the page like genres, etc., and it's going to recalculate it every time. Now, the other thing that they've asked me to do is basically have a look at the easing of COVID restrictions and their effects. So the question is, has the easing of COVID restrictions actually changed that weekly sales revenue number? Well, we can analyze that in DAX. Why don't we put a before and an after based on the first easing restriction that's been put in place? That's at least a good start towards it. But how would we do that in DAX? Well, for that, we're going to need to pre-calculate that first event. So this is going to be a pre-calculated figure, not a runtime one. How can we do that? Well, if we go across to the table here, we're going to go into the countries and we're going to say new column instead. That new column is going to be called first easing, and it's going to look like this. So it's going to be calculate the minimum of the event dates for the date where the event is eased restriction. Now that's the one we're not going to use inside the visual because we're going to actually want to say where the value is passed for the week. So if I go across to the countries, I'm going to put another one in there, and I'm going to put in is before first easing. So here I'm just going to go put in another column because it can be pre-calculated too. And all it's going to do is compare that date that the sales revenue is for. Is it before the first easing or after? Now we can use that inside our figure up here. So why don't we go here and put it in? So I'm going to go weekly sales. I'm just going to put in the words before, and it can be in lowercase, doesn't need to be uppercase. Make that bold. Put that down to size 12, and then I'm going to go ahead and change this. Well, I'm not going to change it. We're going to add it in as a visual level filter. Visual level filter means that it only impacts this visual, and that's why it's good. So we go is before. Well, we're going to make this one true. So this is basically true. Well, it was $25 million before. Then if we go ahead, we can take this and actually duplicate it again. So why don't we go ahead and just copy it? And we'll just make sure that on the right, we've got that selected on the group. So let's go and select that, copy, paste it again. And then let's go ahead and put that next to it. And let's change that to after. And then change this visual inside here to just change that to take false instead of true. And then we can see basically how it's changed. So, and the nice part here is we can see, is it consistent for the different countries? So again, starting at the top, I can go China. Well, yes, Okay, so China's quite hasn't recovered, but England, they also too haven't recovered. Now they're sitting at 11 million, not the 19 million that they were, even though COVID's been eased. So that's us basically doing a little bit of DAX. What we did there was we did some labels. We also did some values that we did. This is just the beginning of your journey in DAX. But I think with that, let's do a recap and have a look at what we did. Okay, so recap time. So what we did there was we created a couple of measures. One returned back labels, and that was basically appropriate for the chart and for the header. The other thing was returning back values, and that was appropriate for the weekly average sales and also the is it before the first easing. Now, consider those two for the values. We also had two different types there. So we had runtime measures and we had pre-calculated or calculated columns. Now, always strive to have calculated columns because Power BI Desktop can do it beforehand and then it doesn't have to calculate it whilst the user's interacting with the report. Now, sometimes it only makes sense to have them as runtime, and I'll leave that with you to go practice and find out which one is which. Now, that was just your starting journey on DAX. You've got plenty more to learn, and I'll publish more videos on it. But otherwise, this is Travis Sansom, Code Advanced Data, and I'll see you in the next one.